everyone, welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. I'm Amma Mama, and I'm giving an update on what I've read this week. It's been kind of a slow week in some ways. I started out really working on trying to read Sign of the Ken, or Quinn, however that is pronounced. And it is an interesting book, but I feel like the way it's written, it feels like it's written for a younger audience, like maybe even like junior high age, somewhere in there. And I could be wrong. I'm not super far into the book yet, but because of that, I was just having a little bit, not a hard time reading it because I am enjoying it, but just I wanted something a little more, I don't know, a little more meaty. So I'm still working on that one, but a little bit slower, but it's good. I just think it's written for a slightly younger audience. And then, anyway, so I decided to read Edenville by Sam Rebelin. And I wanted to like this book a lot more than what I did. I kind of ended up rating it like a 3, maybe a 3.5 stars if I'm feeling generous. Basically, you're following this couple, and one of them, the man, is a horror novelist, and let me back up a little bit, but he has a dream that he wakes up and he starts writing, and so he writes this book and it becomes a huge hit. And I don't think this isn't really giving anything away, but it ends up that dream isn't actually a dream, but he doesn't know it. And so, but through that, his girlfriend and him end up moving to the town of Edenville because he's offered a position at a local college as the writer in residence for the semester. And his girlfriend, keeps telling him like, oh, this is too good to be true. Like why would they just want you out of nowhere? And there was no interview, like there was no process. Like somebody just showed up and said, come here, we want you to do this. And it was for an ulterior motive that you get in the story. But the way the book was written, like there were so many different things happening that at times it was a little bit confusing trying to figure out what was going on and who was connected to what and all of that. And then I thought it was like a horror novel per se, which I think it's supposed to be, but then the way things kind of turn at one point, it reads in some ways more like a science fiction kind of novel, which those are definitely not my favorite. And then to top that off, I don't know what I want to call it, the creature that is plaguing the town or whatever, because if somebody is interested in reading it, I don't want to ruin anything, but the creature that is plaguing things, it had started out as this like vague kind of thing with like descriptions of what was happening and what it was doing. And when it was like that, it was actually pretty creepy, because the very first part of the book that I read with his dream and everything, I don't know what it was about the dream, but I actually had a bad dream that night about it. And he calls them the Gummer folks. And I won't say a whole lot, but like they don't have teeth, but they were like gumming him to death in his dream. I don't know. The way it was written, it was really creepy. And so I liked that. And then like throughout the book, like you get these more things and you find out more of what's going on and history of the town that they're in and all of these things. But then all of a sudden, like he names what these things are. And when the author did that, I mean, when I say he, I mean the author named it. And when he did that, it like ruined the whole thing for me, because then instead of feeling like it was kind of like it was creepy and all of that, then I just was like, well, that's stupid. I don't know, maybe that was just me, but I didn't like it. I will say there was one line that I really liked because it made me laugh towards the end of the book. But he writes, with every beat of her heart, Quinn felt screams pump through her veins. She saw agony rolling on the walls. She tasted salt, rot, sulfur, heartbreak. Like Willy Wonka had handed her a gumball and said, chew this, it's a nightmare. So that was a good line. But so I read it at one point. I almost didn't want to keep reading it, but it wasn't bad enough that, it made me quit. But like I said, it lost me somewhere through it just because of what was happening and the way it was done, and especially when he named what the creatures were and all of that. It just lost a lot for me, but I really wanted to like it. And partly because too, like I had mentioned before, like I really liked the cover, and then like this part's bright yellow, and I love sunflowers, and there's sunflowers in the book. And because of the way everything was, like I thought the sunflowers were going to have a big part somehow in the story, and they were in it, but it didn't make any sense, like why the sunflowers were in it, even with like what happened with them. And again, I'm not going to say anything, but like even with what happened with the sunflowers, first of all, it was kind of stupid what happened with them. And it felt almost like it was an afterthought. Like they were like, oh yeah, we've been writing about these sunflowers, so we need something to happen with them, and let's put this in there. So it wasn't for me. So I gave it a 3-star. I'm like, as I'm talking about it, I feel like I want to give it even a little bit less than that. But like I said, it's not awful, and maybe, somebody might really like the style, and the writing wasn't awful. It was just a little bit confusing at times. And there were some parts that were really good, but then there were just parts that I felt like were kind of dropped or weren't fleshed out very well. But, I don't know. I want to say I would recommend it, maybe a little bit, depending on what someone's taste in books are. But while it does have some horror to it in a way, some of it was more sci-fi-ish. So not a huge fan of this one. Then the next book that I read this week was Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Maher. And I will say that for me, I gave this book a 5-star because I loved it. I thought it was so funny, and I loved the dynamic between Evie, who is the main female person, and then the villain, who is of course the main male character in the book. And it was just funny, like somehow this villain who is like a killer and a torturer and all these things, like his personality at the same time, like you can tell he's a good guy and there's sweetness to him, and there were so many things that I found myself just kind of laughing, out loud about as I was reading, because it was cracking me up so much. And, like even right at the very beginning of the book, when Evie and the villain meet each other for the first time, he says, "You're touching my face," he said flatly. "Yes. Are you happy with that decision?" He raised one dark eyebrow again. "He's a professional killer, right? Maybe he'll murder me now if I ask very nicely." So like their whole dynamic is like he's this villain, basically, and she is this kind of innocent, in a lot of ways, girl who ends up working for him as his assistant. But what I liked is that you start seeing that like he's not as evil as what everyone thinks he is in some ways. And at the same time, while she is a nice person, she's got just a little bit of that kind of villainous, like evil to her personality. But the way it was done, it was, I had fun with it. Now, I know that I've heard people who were like, oh, the writing, it wasn't that great, or I didn't like the story. But for me, it was just because it was so lighthearted and there were so many like just funny bantering conversations and quick little quips between the characters, and not just Evie and the villain, but like some of the side players and stuff. It was, I loved this so much. I had a lot of fun with it. And the next one comes out in August, and so I actually pre-ordered the next one, which is Apprentice to the Villain. So I'm really looking forward to it, because this one I had a lot of fun with. And so you know, as you're following them, and there is a romance aspect to it, but there's also this fantasy aspect. There's some horror to it, a lot of comedy. And so if you're just looking for something that's just kind of, you get a little bit of those like horror villain vibes, and all of that, but like something lighthearted and fun that will still make you smile. I think this, it did it for me. So I really would recommend this for reading if for some reason you have not read it yet. It was really good. So that is all I've really finished reading this week. We've had kind of a busy week and everything, so I haven't had a ton of time to read. But I feel like, I finished 2 books, and one of them definitely took me longer because I wasn't enjoying it. So I felt like I was kind of forcing myself through it. So I am going to continue reading Sign of the Quinn. And then I have one more on my TBR that I haven't read yet that I want to try to finish. Oh, I know the other one too is I'm also still working on Kipling. And we'll see. I don't know if I'm going to finish that one this month or not. I am enjoying the book. It's just that, with the way the writing style is and the type of story and everything, I think it's going to take me a little bit longer because I'm not finding myself wanting to just, it's not like a page turner for me where I'm just picking it up and wanting to read it endlessly. So I have a couple, but I think I'm still on track for finishing everything that I had put on my May TBR. So I will have another update next week, or I may be picking my June TBR next week. We'll see. It'll be one of those 2 things. I haven't quite decided what I'm doing yet. I think we're actually almost at the end of the month, so it may be my June TBR. Anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. Bye.